It's March 2nd, 1877. A smoky back room in the Warmly Hotel in Washington, D.C. The presidential election is deadlocked. The country is on the brink of a civil war, the second civil war. And in this room, a group of politicians make a deal that will alter the course of American history for the next 100 years. The Republicans get the presidency. In exchange, the federal troops are pulled out of the South. It's called the Compromise of 1877, but history remembers it by another name, and this is called the Great Betrayal. And one night, a singular night, the promise of Reconstruction was just abandoned and millions of Black Americans were handed back to the people who had enslaved them.
Why am I telling you this? Because if you understand why the Compromise of 1877 happened, you don't just understand one event. You understand the fundamental tension of American history. Every year, over 500,000 students take the APUSH exam. And every year, over 85% of them fail to get a 5. They fail because they walk into the exam trying to remember the date of the Compromise of 1877.
The College Board doesn't care if you know the date at all. They care if you know that the Compromise of 1877 was the inevitable result of the eternal American war between federal power and states' rights.
I'm Sovik. I got a 1580 on the SAT, got full ride scholarships at my dream school.
And I'm Zach. I went to the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy and got full rides into my dream school. And so today, we are going to do something no other APUSH video has ever done, ever. We're not going to give you a list of facts to memorize. We're just going to show you the matrix.
We're going to break down for you the exact scoring algorithms that the College Board uses. We're going to reveal the 5 narrative arcs that tie all 9 periods together. And we're going to teach you the exact formula to earn that elusive DBQ complexity point, a point that less than 5% of students ever get.
And this is the only video you need to watch to get a 5 on APUSH. Let's begin.
Now, before we teach you the history, we have to teach you the game. You can't win a game if you don't know how the points are scored. The APUSH exam is graded on a raw score of 180 points. To get a 5, you don't need to be perfect, but you need roughly 130 out of the 180 points. That's about 72%. If you get a 72% in your APUSH class, you get a C-. But if you get a 72% on the AP exam, you get a 5 and you get college credit at schools like Harvard University.
So here's exactly where those points actually come from. You see, for section 1, this is going to be your multiple choice. It's going to be 55 questions. You have 55 minutes, and this is going to be worth 40% of your AP score for APUSH. So this is the catch though. Every single question is stimulus based. And so they're going to give you a quote from Alexander Hamilton or a politician or like just some type of political cartoon from the Gilded Age. And then they're going to ask you 3 questions about it.
Rule number 1 of the MCQ. Never read the stimulus first. You have to read the question first. Then look at the source line. Who wrote it and when? If the source line says William Lloyd Garrison, 1831, your brain should immediately fire. Period 4, abolitionist. Radical, anti-slavery. You already know the answer before you read a single word of the text. The College Board uses a text to distract you, but you can use the source line to anchor yourself.
So the next is going to be the SAQ, which is the short answer questions. This is going to be 3 questions. You're going to get 40 minutes, and this is going to be worth 20% of your score. And so you're not going to write an essay here. You're just going to use the ACE method. That's what we call it. And so it's basically an acronym for answer, cite, and explain. And so the first part where it says answer, the prompt, you're going to answer the prompt directly in one sentence. So just one singular sentence for A. And then for C, this is where you're going to cite. So you're going to cite a specific historical vocabulary word. And so you're not going to say something like people were mad at taxes. You're going to say something like the Stamp Act of 1765. So that's how you're properly going to cite. And then for the last part of the ACE acronym, the E part, that stands for explain. And so you're going to explain how that vocabulary word that you just chose proves your answer. And you're going to do this with 3 sentences basically per part. You're going to get in, get your points, and just get out.
Then comes the gauntlet. Section 2, the document-based question, the DBQ, and the long essay question, the LEQ. Combined, these 2 essays are worth 40% of your score.
So just listen to me very carefully because you can't get a 5 without dominating the DBQ section. I'm not kidding, because it's worth 25% of your score alone, and it's graded on a 7-point rubric. Think about that, a 7-point rubric. There's not much room for error. So the average student gets a 3, where we're going to teach you how to get a 6 or a 7 on this section. But to do that, you're going to have to understand the actual story of America.
Now, the biggest lie that your APUSH teacher ever told you is that you need to know everything on the timeline. But period 1, period 2, period 9, pre-Columbian contact, early colonization, and the 1980s to today. Combined, these 3 periods make up less than 15% of the exam. So if you're spending your hours before the AP exam memorizing the intricacies of Reagan's administration or Columbus's sailing routes, you are burning time.
The meat of the exam, the absolute core of American history is periods 3 through 8. That's the one you need to be focusing on. So this is going to be from 1754 to 1980, French and Indian War to the election of Ronald Reagan. And so this is 80% of your exam basically, but you can't memorize this chronologically. You have to understand it thematically.
You see, history is not just a list of events. It's actually a series of chain reactions. Event A causes event B, which triggers event C. To prove this, we're going to run you through the most important cause and effect chains in the entire gauntlet.
So it starts with a war, the French and Indian War. Britain wins, but they go completely broke. And so how do they pay off the war debt? You tax your colonies.
For decades, Britain had practiced salutary neglect, which meant that they left the colonies alone. The colonies had built their own identities, their own town halls, their own mini democracies. So when Britain suddenly slaps them with the Stamp Act of 1765, it wasn't just about the money. It was an invasion of the entire identity they had built.
Exactly. And then the revolution happens. We win. But now we have a bigger problem. How do we govern ourselves. They write the Articles of Confederation, and it's a complete disaster. The federal government has no power to tax, and most importantly, no military.
Enter Daniel Shays, 1786. The Revolutionary War veteran comes home to Massachusetts and he realizes that the government is foreclosing on his farm because he hasn't been paid for his military service. And so he starts a rebellion. Shays Rebellion, key vocab term. The federal government is so weak, they literally cannot stop a mob of angry farmers.
And so Shays Rebellion basically proves that the Articles are dead. They call it the Constitutional Convention. That's what they call it. But immediately, the founding fathers split into two factions that will define American politics forever. So Alexander Hamilton wants a strong federal government and a national bank. But Thomas Jefferson wants power left to the states and the farmers. And so federal power versus states' rights. And so this argument is eventually just going to tear the entire country apart.
The year shifts to 1800. Period 4. This is defined by what we call the market revolution. America goes from subsistence farming, growing your own food, to a capitalist market economy. The Erie Canal is built. Railroads connect the North. Factories pop up in Massachusetts.
But rapid economic change causes massive social anxiety. When people get anxious, they turn to religion. The Second Great Awakening explodes across the whole country, and it just preaches that you can achieve salvation through good works. And if you have to do good works to get to heaven, what do? You start trying to fix the society.
This becomes the age of reform, abolitionism, temperance, the women's rights movement, culminating in the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848.
But beneath all of the progress, a dark undercurrent is pulling the country apart. Manifest destiny pushes America westward. But every time we add a new state, the same terrifying question is asked. Will it be free or will it be slave?
The year shifts to 1844. Period 5. The breaking point. We fight the Mexican-American War and gain massive new territory. The Compromise of 1850 and the Kansas-Nebraska Act try to keep the peace by letting states vote on slavery. But it fails spectacularly. Bleeding Kansas turns into a mini civil war. Foreshadowing what will eventually come.
And then the Dred Scott decision of 1857. The Supreme Court rules that Black people are not citizens and Congress cannot ban slavery anywhere. It is the match that lights the powder keg. Lincoln is elected, 1860. The South secedes.
Now we're in the Civil War. The Civil War destroys the old America and builds a new one. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments abolish slavery, grant birthright citizenship, and give Black men the right to vote. During Reconstruction, Black Americans hold office across the South. It's a moment of radical, beautiful, democratic compromise.
And then comes the back room in the Wormley Hotel. The Compromise of 1870s. Federal troops leave. Reconstruction dies. Jim Crow is born. The promise is broken.
The year shifts to 1865. Period 6. The Gilded Age. Mark Twain named it. Gilded means covered in a thin layer of gold, but cheap and rotten underneath.
This is the era of the robber barons. You see, Andrew Carnegie and Steel, John D. Rockefeller, and oil, J.P. Morgan and banking. They build monopolies that control the entire country. They justify their immense wealth with social Darwinism, the idea that the rich are biologically superior to the poor.
But the poor fight back. The labor movement explodes. The Pullman strike of 1894 shuts down the entire nation's railroad system until the federal military steps in and crushes it. Out west, farmers form the Populist Party to fight the corrupt banks and the railroads. They demand an income tax and the direct election of senators. They lose all their battles, but their ideas will win the war.
Period 7, which is from 1890 to 1945, is massive because it begins with the Progressive Era. Middle-class reformers finally take down the monopolies. Teddy Roosevelt busts the trust. McCrackers like Uptown Sinclair expose the meatpacking industry. And women finally win the right to vote with the 19th Amendment in 1920.
Then America steps onto the world stage. We win the Spanish-American War and become an empire. We enter World War I. 1920s roar with consumerism, the Harlem Renaissance, and illegal jazz clubs.
And then the music stops. 1929, the stock market crashes. The Great Depression. A quarter of the country is literally unemployed.
FDR steps in. Franklin Delano Roosevelt saves American capitalism with a new deal. He fundamentally changes the relationship between the citizen and the government. Social Security, the FDIC. The government is now responsible for the social safety net. Then World War II pulls us out of the Depression and America emerges as the undisputed global superpower.
And now we move on to period 8, 1945 to 1980. This is called the modern era, and everything is dictated by the Cold War. The Truman Doctrine states we will contain communism anywhere on Earth. This leads directly to the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the military-industrial complex.
Domestically, the broken promise of Reconstruction is finally challenged. The Civil Rights Movement, Brown versus the Board of Education. MLK writes the letter from Birmingham jail, exposing the hypocrisy of white moderates. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 dismantles legal segregation.
The optimism of the 1960s dies in the 1970s. The Vietnam War tears the country apart. Nixon resigns in disgrace after Watergate. The economy stagnates. By 1980, Americans have lost faith in the federal government, setting the stage for Ronald Reagan and the conservative resurgence.
That is a gauntlet. That is the story. If you understand how those dominoes fall, you have the historical knowledge to ace the exam. Now, let's talk about how to write the DBQ.
All right, so the DBQ is going to be worth 25% of your score. You have 60 minutes, 7 documents, 7 points. Most students get a 3. Here's exactly how you're going to get a 6 or 7.
Point 1, the thesis. Your thesis cannot just restate the prompt. It must make a historically defensible claim and establish a line of reasoning. A bad thesis would be something like, the New Deal changed America a lot. Whereas a good thesis would be something like, while the New Deal fundamentally expanded the federal government's role in the economy, it failed to challenge existing racial hierarchies, leaving marginalized groups excluded from the new social safety net.
Now we're on to point 2, contextualization. This is the easiest point that everyone misses. Contextualization is the Star Wars opening crawl of your essay, basically. It goes into your intro paragraph before your thesis. You must describe the broader historical events that caused the prompt. If the prompt is the progressive era, your contextualization must be 3 to 4 sentences about the Gilded Age, monopolies, and wealth inequality that made the progressive era necessary.
Points 3 and 4 are all about evidence from the documents. You see, to get both points, you must use at least 6 of the 7 documents to support an argument. Do not just quote the document. Explain how the document proves your thesis.
You must provide one specific historical fact, event, or person that is not in the documents and use it to support your argument. People were racist. If you just put something like that, that's outside of evidence. You have to say something like, the Agricultural Adjustment Act paid white landowners to reduce crop yields, which led to the mass eviction of black sharecroppers. This is something you have to say.
Point 6, forcing, HAPP. For at least 3 documents, you have to explain the document's historical situation, audience, purpose, or point of view, and how that affects the meaning. An example would be, because the author was a factory owner writing during the violent Pullman strike of 1894, his point of view is inherently anti-labor, which explains his purpose in framing the union workers as dangerous anarchists. You want to connect the who to the why.
Then point 7, this is going to be complexity. And so this is basically the unicorn point. Less than 5% of students get this. And so your teacher probably told you to just write a counter-argument paragraph at the end of your essay. But let me tell you this right now, your teacher is completely wrong.
You see, complexity is not a paragraph. It's an approach. The College Board wants to see that you understand that history is messy and nuanced. The easiest way to guarantee this point is what we call the both sides method.
So if the prompt asks you to evaluate the success of the progressive era, you structure your essay to show that it was a massive success for economic regulation. And this is going to mean like busting trusts, pure food, and drug act. But it was a crazy failure for civil rights. Woodrow Wilson, segregating the federal government is basically what I'm talking about. You weave this contradiction through the entire essay. You show them the gray area. That is how you earn complexity.
And now we're going to leave you with the master key, the secret that separates the 4s from the 5s.
You see, APUSH is not 9 different periods. It is one continuous story told through 5 recurring narrative arcs. And so if you memorize these 5 arcs, you can answer any prompt they throw at you.
Arc 1, federal power for states' rights. Hamilton versus Jefferson, the nullification crisis, the Civil War, FDR's New Deal, Reagan's conservatism, the pendulum of power constantly swinging between Washington, D.C. and the states.
And then we have Arc 2, who gets to be American? So the dispossession of Native Americans, the enslavement of Africans, the waves of Irish, Italian, and Chinese immigrants, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Civil Rights Movement. American history is a constant battle over who is included in the phrase. American history is a constant battle over who is included in the phrase, we the people.
Arc 3, the cycle of reform. Whenever American society becomes too unequal or corrupt, a reform movement rises up to fix it. The First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, the populists, the progressives, the New Deal, the Great Society. It's a repeating loop.
And then we have Arc 4, economic transformation. So substance farming, the market revolution, the Gilded Age industrialization, post-World War II consumer capitalism, the shift to a globalized service economy. As the economy changes, society changes with it.
Arc 5, America and the world. George Washington's farewell address, warning against foreign alliances, the Monroe Doctrine, imperialism in 1898, isolationism after and before World War I, the atomic bomb, the Cold War, the war on terror, the constant debate between isolationism and intervention.
You see, when you sit down to write your DBQ, identify which of these 5 arcs the prompt belongs to. Once you know the arc, you know the entire story. You see, getting a 5 on APUSH isn't about being the smartest kid in the room. Getting a 5 isn't about being the smartest kid in the room. It's not about who even studied the flashcard the longest. It's about who understands the architecture of the exam.
Here at Ignite Test Prep, we don't just teach you facts. We teach you the exact algorithms. We teach you the psychology of the graders. We teach you how to look at an impossible exam and see the matrix behind it.
We finally cracked the code to the SAT. It is Ignite Test Prep.
That is why our students don't just pass, they dominate. It's why we have a 100% success rate placing our students into Ivy League universities. We engineer academic outcomes that other consultants think are impossible.
So if you're tired of the guesswork, if you're tired of studying for hours and still ending up with a 3, if you want a way to actually guarantee your results, whether it's a 5 on APUSH, a 1550 plus on SAT, or an acceptance letter from Stanford or Harvard, what you need is elite mentorship.
So click the link in the description, go to ignitetestprep.com, book a consultation with us. Stop playing the game blindly and let us give you the blueprint to win.
Study smart, master the rubric, and we'll see you at the top.
See you.